Moving on to skeletal word roots. Okay, so the first term is acro. So like acromion process. So when we think of the acromion process, we're thinking of part of the scapula, right? Part of the scapula right here, that tip, that point right there at the shoulder. Now, acro with the acromion process is specifically kind of referencing the upper limb. Okay, so acro means extremity. So that's where the extremity kind of begins, right? So it comes over to the scapula, that's the point of the shoulder, and then from there on is the extremities. So acro, the acromion process, you can remember that by thinking, well, that's where the extremity kind of begins, right? Acromion process, acro extremity. Ankylo is our next term, like ankylosing spondylitis. So, Ankylosaurus is another one. I'm a big dinosaur nerd, so a lot of these also you can find in the names of dinosaurs, which is always fun. It's like, hey, that's crosses over. It's that Latin, Greek. Anyway, ankylo. So ankylosing spondylitis has something to do with the vertebrae and the discs between the vertebrae. So the vertebrae start to degenerate, and that causes the space between the vertebrae to kind of go away. So you got vertebrae sitting on top of each other. And when, I got a feeling I'm going to be using this quite a bit. So when our vertebrae, when the discs between the vertebrae go away, the vertebrae sit on top of each other, that's going to cause our curvature, our natural curvature in the thoracic vertebrae, the lumbar vertebrae, and the cervical vertebrae to kind of go away, right? So somebody with ankylosing spondylitis might end up having something like kyphosis, which is where we get the term ankylosing spondylitis, because it makes the vertebrae look crooked. Okay, so that curvature, that hypercurvature that you would see in somebody that doesn't have the intervertebral discs between the vertebrae is what results in ankylosing spondylitis, the crooked nature of the vertebrae. Okay, next up, arthro, like arthritis. Okay. Rheumatoid arthritis, arthroscopy. And arthroscopy is a type of procedure performed where a camera is inserted into arthritis, is inflammation of a joint. Okay, so where two bones come together is a joint, an arthrosis, right? Synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, diarthrosis, those are all types of joints, right? Arthro means joint. So arthritis, inflammation of a joint. Arthroscopy, typically done in the knee or shoulder, right? They put a little camera in the joint just to take a look at everything inside the joint. Okay, moving on. Brachio, like biceps brachii or brachialis, brachioradialis, the brachial artery. What do you think? It means arm. Okay, so again, with our regional anatomy, we know that this is the region of the arm. The region between the shoulder and the elbow is the arm. So this is the brachial region. This is where you would find the brachial artery and biceps brachii and brachialis and brachioradialis right down here. Right. So brachio means arm. Brachiosaurus, the dinosaur with a really long neck. Anyway, like I said, a lot of these terms kind of match up with dinosaurs as well. Anyway, cephalo, like cephalosporin, biceps brachii, sep, kind of matches with this sep, C-E-P. So sep and cephalo mean the same thing. Encephalitis. Remember, we talked about encephalo with the nervous system. That means brain. Encephalo. En means inside. Inside. The brain is inside the head, right? Cephalo means head. So biceps has 2 heads. Triceps has 3 heads. Encephalitis. Inflammation inside the brain, inside the skull, inside the head. Inflammation of the brain, basically, is encephalitis. Okay, so cephalo means head. Okay, moving on. Chondro, like costochondritis. These are the structures here that are involved with costochondritis. So what are these? What are these made of right here? Now, you might be thinking bone, but these are the bones, right? What connects the bones to this bone right here? And these are joints, right? So these are connected by cartilage. So chondro means cartilage. Costochondritis is inflammation of the costal cartilage right here, which is never going to be fun. Never going to be fun. I've got stories. I've had a lot of injuries recently. One involves a rib, not necessarily costochondritis, but it definitely involves the costal cartilage. Story for another time. Anyway, so chondro means cartilage, like chondromalacia patella. Chondromalacia patella. That's the cartilage right there. Okay, moving on. Cleido, like sternocleidomastoid. So sternocleidomastoid is a muscle that's named after its attachments. So sterno would obviously mean sternum. Cleido would mean, where else does it attach? Sternum. Mastoid refers to the mastoid process right back here. There, it kind of looks like a boob. And there goes my cat. Enjoy my cat messing up my shot. Whatever. So the mastoid process right here is the mastoid portion of sternocleidomastoid. Cleido refers to the clavicle right here. So sternocleidomastoid originates on the sternum and the clavicle and then inserts up on the mastoid process. So cleido refers to clavicle. Okay. And then we have costo. Now, I kind of mentioned it just a moment ago with costochondritis, right? So chondro is clavicles. Costo, not Costco, greatest store on the planet, by the way, Costco. I love Costco. But costo refers to the ribs. Think of the intercostal muscles. When we go eat ribs, we're eating intercostals, right? Those are the intercostal muscles that you find between the ribs. Okay? Costochondritis, inflammation of the costal cartilage. Okay, so costo means ribs. Moving on, what about kypho? Like kyphosis. So when we think of kyphosis or a kyphotic curve, we think of this curve right here in the thoracic vertebrae, right? With kyphosis, it's a hypercurvature of this vertebrae, and that hypercurvature would make it look like a hill, right? Kind of a hunchback. So kypho means hill, so it produces kind of a bump that you would be able to actually see a bit. So kypho, hill, and just think of kyphosis. If somebody is positioned this way, you would definitely be able to see that hill on their back, right? Kypho, hill. Then we have lordo, like lordosis. Okay, let's go right down here. This is a lordotic curve, right? So lordo means curve. Lordosis is a hypercurvature of either the lumbar or cervical vertebrae, because those are curvatures that go anteriorly. They are lordotic curves, right? The lordotic curve goes anteriorly as opposed to kyphotic, which goes posteriorly or dorsally. So lordosis would be an increase in that curve that goes anteriorly. Okay, so you see that a lot in pregnant women, people who are possibly obese, a lot of weight kind of pulling down here. Rectus abdominis might be stretched out quite a bit. That causes the lumbar vertebrae to kind of be pulled forward and down anteriorly. Right. So that is lordo. Lordo means curve. Okay. Moving on. Ortho, like orthopedic. What about orthodontist? And we kind of went over orthodontist a bit earlier. Orthodontist. Donto means teeth. So we think of orthodontist. Orthodontist applies braces to do what to the teeth? To make the teeth straight, right? So orthopedic doctors are doctors that try to get the body to be as straight as possible, right? And a lot of factors can go into that, as we know, of course, the feet, the hips, the vertebrae, even something like the shoulders can all factor into the body being straight, the skeleton being as straight as possible. Try to get the body as symmetrical as possible. So ortho means straight. Okay? Moving on, osteo, like osteoblast, osteoclast, osteocyte. What do all of these mean? Osteo refers to bone, right? So an osteoblast is a germ cell that builds bone. Osteoclasts are cells that break down bone tissue. Osteocytes are just bone cells themselves. So you see the term osteoporosis, osteomyelitis, osteoarthritis. These all have something to do with bones. Okay, so osteo means bone. Pedi. I don't have one. So an example is pedicure. What do you think a pedicure involves? What part of the body does a pedicure involve? Of course, a pedicure involves the feet. So pedi means feet. Okay, pedicure, getting work done on your feet, as opposed to podo. Okay, what is podo? Like a podiatrist. What do podiatrists do? They are doctors that specialize in the feet, right? So podiatry is a specialization of the feet. I've been to a podiatrist a couple times. I had really bad ingrown toenails when I was a teenager. I had to get them. First, I had to get it was on both of my big toes. I had to get the entire nail removed. My mom decided I had to go to the emergency room instead of just making an appointment with a podiatrist who would have just cut off the sides. So they grew back, unfortunately, still ingrown. So I had to go to an actual podiatrist and have just the sides cut out. And then chemicals used to burn the sides so they didn't become ingrown anymore. Anyway, podiatry, that's the doctor that I visited, the specialist, if you will. Podiatrist. So podo means foot. Okay, so podiatry is an example. Okay, you could also think of arthropods. Some animals are kind of classified by how many legs or feet they have. Decapods, of course. And what about pedi? Bipedal, right? 2 feet, walk on 2 feet like humans. Anyway, just throwing that out there. Just another example. There's nothing wrong with examples that help us to further learn this information. Okay, scolio, like scoliosis. It's the primary example you're going to see with scolio. It has to do with the vertebrae, right? What do the vertebrae look like in somebody with scoliosis? How do they appear? Are they straight? No, kind of like ankylosing spondylitis, right? They look kind of crooked in some way, but instead of like with ankylosing spondylitis, it's crooked going this way anteriorly, causing something like kyphosis. The vertebrae move laterally, usually to the right side in the thoracic region. So you have a lateral curvature of the thoracic vertebrae. That's basically what scoliosis is, and there are a lot of reasons somebody might have scoliosis, but that's essentially what it is. So the vertebrae go off to the right and make the vertebrae look crooked, right? So scolio means crooked. So scoliosis, crooked condition. Okay. And then finally, spondylo, like spondylosis or ankylosing spondylitis. A couple examples. So with ankylosing, we have crooked condition of, and then spondylitis, inflammation of the vertebrae. Okay, so spondylo means vertebrae. Spondylosis just refers to like any old vertebral condition. Okay, so there are a lot of conditions that kind of can fall under the spondylosis category, but spondylosis is just a vertebral condition. Ankylosing spondylitis, inflammation and degeneration of the discs, the intervertebral discs in the vertebrae that cause it to become crooked. Ankylosing spondylitis. There's a lot that goes into that name for sure. But that's essentially what spondylo means, vertebrae. Okay, so I think that wraps up the skeletal word roots.